because in principle you give tasks to that autonomous agent, and that autonomous agent can do quite a few steps unattended and might never get back to you because maybe there's not a problem, there's nothing okay, everything is okay, so we might never hear from the autonomous agent anymore.
Euphoria of an agent came back, and then people are talking about autonomous agents now more than how they used to do in the past, is primarily because of the tech readiness that's coming in now, right?
But there are certain issues, and the reasoning of what is the real problem and making sure the problem being solved is being done by one or more autonomous agents.
So, if you have heard this story, there's a whole lot of emphasis on two things. Number one is how people are expecting AI to solve problems in an autonomous manner. Two, there is a whole emphasis on the quality and the nature of the data that's residing in multiple systems and databases. Welcome to another episode of our conversation series, the Coffee Conversations. Today I'm with Johan. We're going to, chat about. I want to talk about the convergence of data and AI to build autonomous decision systems that is being well talked about in the world right now. To begin with, I want to start with a story kind of a thing which we heard from one of our customers. A customer who's from a cruise lines industry. They've had this scenario where they've had systems to record the incidents in the ship, where in every small incident, right, from a slip to all the way to a fire accident, you actually do a very detailed recording of it in their incident management system. Then both offshore as well as onshore, when the ship is at the shore as well as when it's offshore. They do have a HRMS system which has the details of all the crew members who are working in the ship on active duty. They have a very elaborate training SOPs, training policies that are all available in their document management system for the training database. So, and then finally they also have an LMS system where, by law as well as the need of the industry, all the crew members, they have to go through extensive training on a regular basis. There are mandatory trainings that have to happen maybe once in a month, once every time after a cruise, etc. So they have all these systems. Underlying is very detailed amount of data, both structured data, both and unstructured data. And today, as they stand, they use multiple dashboards built on each of these systems because these data are in silos. And sometimes the data gets replicated, like for example, an incident data is again shipped into an investigation app where they are looking into incident and trying to find out the root cause analysis. And these data is again shipped to a LMS analyst who is trying to understand what kind of betterments can happen in the training, etc. Right? Now, if you see here, when we were talking to this customer, interestingly, the customer was hearing about AI and what AI can do. And it's very clear that his expectations is that can I use AI that could, kind of scour through all these systems and can get insights so that my LMS analyst need not manually go into each of these systems, go through its data sets and understand what's the right training that needs to be given to the crew, or did we miss any trainings, etc. This seemed like a very, very important use case. This seemed like an expectation from AI that in different forms and shapes many organizations are trying to achieve, right? So, if you have heard this story, there's a whole lot of emphasis on two things. Number one is how people are expecting AI to solve problems in an autonomous manner. Two, there is a whole emphasis on the quality and the nature of the data that's residing in multiple systems and databases, right? So, taking this into consideration, let's understand how enterprises are, delving into what use cases can help them when you build autonomous AI systems, right? So, Johan, let's start at the top, right? what are autonomous AI systems according to you, and what are various examples you can think of that different industries? I of course talked about the cruise line industry, but it could be a manufacturing industry, it could be an oil and gas industry. What are these autonomous systems, if at all they're built, look like?
Yeah, interesting. Of course, you call them autonomous. But autonomous is relatively new also in that space, because you have these agents, or as you know, for many years you have code you could send out and do things for you, but of course they would go out and do something and would come back to you again for you to make the next call, what the next step would be. Of course, what you do with autonomous, of course, that person in between will be phased out more or less, because in principle you give tasks to that autonomous agent, and that autonomous agent can do quite a few steps unattended and might never get back to you, because maybe there's not a problem, there's nothing okay, everything is okay. So we might never hear from the autonomous agent anymore. It will record what the findings was. It will only come back to you if ever, if found a real issue with you, which it could not solve within his own reasoning. And over time, maybe you can even solve that. So it's really that end-to-end story that the agent might go from agent 1 to agent 2 to agent 3 to agent 4, really trying to solve the particular problem, and you wouldn't even know about it. You might have gone home and do the next job, what have you. So that is what is unique about that autonomous agent. That really you can really go away and really make that story end to end. Examples of that could be in the manufacturing industry, where you're talking about there's somewhere an issue in your production line. So you're getting alarms coming in from your PI data, which is your time series data, about the pressure of a piece of equipment or the temperature. You might get a piece of data information coming in. That autonomous agent could go away and say, okay, I see that data. Let me look at the related SAP data, for instance. I see problems over there. Is there maintenance on this? What is happening with the system at the same time? And based on that, I now have this type of information. Based on that, okay, I have these options, what it could be. I then reasoning out what the most likely option would be to fix that particular problem. It could be a belt on the engine, whatever the problem is. And then we'll of course tell the maintenance person, please execute, and we'll make sure that whole exercise is being carried out. So that in this whole exercise, there will be no human being involved in it, because it will pick up the data will highlight but there are certain issues, and the reasoning of what is the real problem and making sure the problem being solved is being done by one or more autonomous agents. But there will be never, and if it's done successfully, then nobody would ever know, between quotes.
Absolutely.
In this whole thing. And that's one example. There are multiple examples. And that's why I understand why people are very excited about autonomous agents, even maybe more excited than they were about other things about AI, because there's so many examples where these things can be very, very useful. If you think any industry, you can think about things where people have to do things which are often not very difficult to do, but people still need human beings to do them. And often human being is not even the best in doing that, because they could get bored with the thing and they might not make the right decisions. Yeah. So I can understand, if you think about it, why there's so much excitement about agentic AI or agents over there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So interestingly, when you talked about, there were agents that used to be there earlier also. We used to write code which could do things on its own.
Well, we call it subroutines in the past. Remember many years back?
Yeah, absolutely. The reason, the euphoria of an agent came back, and then people are talking about autonomous agents now more than how they used to do in the past, is primarily because of the tech readiness that's coming in now, right? If you think about it, right, the whole, if you forgetting about the technology, what are you looking at? You're looking at a program to be able to have a goal of, let's say in this case of what you just talked about, manufacturing scenario, that I want to keep the
production line
production line up and running.
Exactly.
Yes, right?
That's my goal.
So, what happens when there is an alert, right? Today when those alerts are coming in, there are alert collection systems and somebody is looking at it. What the programs earlier lacked is ability to be able to reason the intelligence part was lacking.
Exactly. You always have to go back to human being. I see this, but I don't know what to do with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it used to tell that this happened, but it does not know what to do with it.
Yeah.
With the ability to reason, you are able to now, the technology is allowing you to bring in the intelligence into that whole workflow, and that's what's helping you to make it autonomous to be really. So, so the tech obviously is the reason why autonomous AI systems are being taught. People call it agentic AI, people call it multi-agent scenarios, autonomous agents. All these are names primarily for the same purpose.
Same thing,
right? Now, what we are seeing now, and if anybody goes to internet, everybody is talking about it. Everybody is talking about the technology part. But what we want to talk about is when we are going with these examples to the industries, we often find that there is a wish, people have this expectation, but then are they really ready just because the technology came in? That answer lies very deeply in the data part.
In the data store, Exactly,
so, as they say, and right from the time AI came in, the very famous statement that goes around is garbage in, garbage out. Right? If there is garbage, then you're going to get garbage. The thinking is going to happen based on what data you have, right? So in terms of data readiness, right, especially for enterprises, how do you see it? What's the data readiness looking like to build these autonomous AI systems? And what do you think, what is your lay of the land in terms of how the data is? And what's the readiness required for building autonomous systems?
If you speak to companies, and if you speak a lot to companies, they all claim, they all at the high level claim that they have things in place. But what we do, as you know, we do health checks at data health checks companies. We look a little bit deeper. Often that's not really the case, because they might have data in certain platforms or databases, but you already mentioned the word silos. Often, in my example, I gave an example a moment ago, you have to relate data from various sources. In the example about that problem, you have to say, okay, what is the time series data I collect? Time series data, what's the pressure, the engine data? I need to collect ERP data about the device because I need to know what's the maintenance schedule and what is the information, what is the specifications of the device. I need to collect the PNID, the pipe and instrumentation diagram, because I need to see how does it fit in the structure of the factory.
So the contextualization.
Exactly. Yeah. But all these three systems in most companies have no relationship to each other. So they have a naming convention for your PI data, you have a different naming conventions for your SAP data, and you have a different naming convention for your PNID data. So you can have lots of AI systems out there, but if you have these silos out there without any relationship, you really struggle. So one of the things we saw it recently again in an oil and gas company, where exactly that problem. They had these systems, but in principle, you don't bring it together. And so what you do, we call it then data contextualization. You try to now align in my example, your PI data in your tech register with your asset data, with your PNID data, so that you almost create a new key, a new entry, but the key does relate to the relevant entries in the three sources of data. But then when you look at this PI data, you also know, okay, what device are we talking about? What is the characteristics of the device? And by the way, how does it fit in the overall schedule? In many companies, that is really not in place.
And this is just one example.
It's just one example, but it highlights the purpose of the what you mentioned, the islands of data very much.
Yeah, absolutely. With leaders now thinking about implementing AI, implementing generative AI, the first thing they got to think about is this aspect. How ready is this data?
Exactly.
Because unless the data is ready, you will not get the return on investment that you're making on your AI systems per se.
Yeah, and I mean that data we're talking about has been there for many years.
Yeah.
But it was never used in context of each other.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take these examples, it was human beings who more or less tried to make these connections on the fly almost.
Yeah.
But now, of course, with digital, with different user interface, which brings all the data together, you also need to make sure that automated data gets together. Yeah. So the problem is not new. It has always been there. But of course, now with the AI tool and other capabilities out there, you need to bring that. You have to align now these data sources to be successful with the AI story.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, while this also is a very common thing happening, right? people always think that even if the data is dirty, data is in silos, somehow AI would be able to figure it out, right? And I've seen scenarios. I've personally done a lot of these, data meshing using AI. You got to know that unless you feed in your organizational context to your data, it would try to do it in a very generic manner. So yes, there are tools available which can help you bring these silos together, but then you have to have a very clear goal of what your end data is going to be with, which is free of, which has a context to it, which is free of dirty data, because if you push the dirty data into your AI systems, it's going to take dirty decisions, essentially, right? So without having the data ready, your AI is not ready.
No, at the same time, we also need to see how clean can you get your data, because there's a limit to how clean you can get the data. Otherwise, you spend the next 20 years on trying to get my data clean.
That's exactly what my next question was. So in order to be able to, now we know that this is what is needed, and I think this statement is not new. Everybody knows this, right? But how do you approach it, right? To make these autonomous AI systems, what kind of suggestions you have for enterprises in terms of simple but effective initiatives?
Well, we in our environment we call it minimum viable products and the MVPs. And what it's all about is say, okay, this is my overall factory, but I'm really going to only look at this one production line, and in this one production I'm only going to look at these components. I only need to worry about these 2 or 3 data sources, and then really start. It might only be 2 data sources, and then try to contextualize or clean that data. And of course, how can you clean data? In principle, you bring your data to an enterprise data platform, can be Microsoft Fabric environment, which is widely deployed, widely available nowadays. And you have lots of rules and tooling in there to at least make the data cleaner. I'm not going to say it's 100% clean, but you have these AI systems can have a reasoning, say, okay, but this is the way you bring your data clean together. But you start in steps, and almost for every step you do, you can only give the business case, because if you do the step 1 of an MVP, you can still say, by doing that, I can increase my availability of the production line by 5% or whatever the percent is. That means in 5% that you can translate in real money, because if your production line is 5% more or whatever, then you can say, okay, that means your real money every day, so many dollars.
So very, very
tangible steps. It's very important. 100% you're right here, that you have real clear goals, because otherwise the business people will be very suspicious to say, well, they really would say, okay, look, but that's build your credibility.
I think smaller, and I think the word MVP that you used primarily is not necessarily an MVP for the entire application per se. You could define your goal, create a MVP, goal for it, and then achieve that. And that may not be the most clean data, but something that's good enough for making sure that AI systems work.
And what's very important in that thing, what you also mentioned, is that you start building confidence. But it's all about confidence. If you come to you and say, I'm going to solve your problem, you will be very skeptical, because you've been in this problem for many, many years. You're only getting confident if you say, okay, hey, you did the step 1. Look, now I have X numbers of dollars or euros, whatever, in benefits. Then start building your more credibility.
And that's our approach in general has been, right? If you see, when we are being approached, for building these systems, the way we are approaching it is from 2 parts. Number 1 is we are able to showcase what these systems might look like given your data is ready, which means that we are showcasing how, let's say, a framework like Crew.ai or AutoGen, a multi-agentic framework that we have implemented, the enterprise governance controls that are required so that the business can sleep peacefully with all these autonomous agents working. So that's one part of it. The other part of it, the way we are approaching is we're doing data checks to be able to define where they are and how far or how near they are with respect to implementing these systems, creating a roadmap.
And with very clear steps.
With clear steps, defining a minimum viable product, for each of the tracks where the data needs to get ready, and then all aligning it to our larger philosophy of the 7-step framework that we have with AccuPrism, and then we produce this as the business case to our customers as a starting point. Right?
And that it has also an element of an architect. So how do you go from your current environment to your target picture?
Exactly.
Or then you say, okay, these are all part of that step you're referring to on getting from A to B, but every step in itself has a business benefit of doing it.
Absolutely. Ultimately, if business doesn't see the benefit very quickly, they will get suspicious and they'll get impatient.
They will just check out. Yeah,
they'll just check out. Absolutely, right. So I guess to summarize, I would say that number one, it's a question of when. It's not the question of whether we will do it or not when it comes to building these autonomous AI systems.
It will happen.
It will happen.
Yeah.
There is, an enormous amount of technology advancement that is happening. So companies who will decide to wait and watch might just lose out even at the competition level itself.
Yeah.
So please take steps towards first building, agents that are, governed by humans.
Yeah.
Then make sure that you put all the controls in place, get your data ready, then start building autonomous agents. Where
you increase the complexity of the agent in steps.
Exactly.
Once you start very simple, okay, now, because autonomous agent will not be born overnight.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And building these things right now are not matter of months anymore. It's all days and weeks, and people are sitting down, there's so many of these, YouTubers who are technical guys who start off the YouTube video and end up with coming up with an agent.
Exactly. Yeah.
What's the difference between them and you deploying those agents in an enterprise is exactly what we discussed today.
Yeah.
Bringing in those governance and controls, keeping your data ready, converging the data and AI to be able to build an autonomous data system.
And in the case of data, what of course now becomes very important that you bring your operational data and your decision data together.
Yes.
Because in the past, of course, you had your operational data separately from your decision-making data.
Absolutely.
And now you bring that over. And that's also one of the reasons that I saw in our early environment that you had your operational data being used for many years, but you never knew how bad the quality was. Of course, now with bringing together, you start using the data in a different way, and you start realizing, that was very poor, the data quality, but it was hardly used in the past.
Absolutely, now that we spoke about how the data and AI, if it's converged properly, and how it can help you build a very impactful and business ROI-oriented autonomous AI systems. And we also discussed at least how our approach towards these have been. Our approach towards these have been to be able to create a very systematic approach to both take care of the technology readiness from an agent's point of view, the data readiness for keeping the right data to be available for these autonomous agents, right? At Acuvate, I take pride, much like what we've done with all the previous upcoming technologies, we've always taken that step forward, explored the technology. What we did was we took a lot of these technologies, created those enterprise-ready components, right? We call that bot core agents. This platform allows you to basically not reinvent the wheel when it comes to the enterprise readiness for implementing autonomous AI systems. For example, governance. Governance is a big thing, right? If safety and assurance is the number one thing that the IT has to remember when business is implementing these systems. Or, for example, how would you, reuse your prompts? How would you abstract the available technologies so that, let's say, you started off with a certain LLM and you saw in 6 months another LLM has taken pace. How do you shift easily without, breaking down the entire system? So we've built all these layers into our bot core agents, enterprise-ready accelerator platform, and we could have those autonomous AI systems build much more faster with all these systems ready. It will allow you to not just build but also test, to deploy, and then of course do the LLM ops and ML ops on top of it, right? So what we can proudly say is today with the clear use cases, we are able to go back and deliver MVP at least within next 4 weeks when we get a use case, right? So that's the key USP that we bring in when it comes to implementing agentic AI. We really hope that we're able to work with many customers across the globe to bring this to light and help them realize the value of autonomous AI. You all have the data, like enormous amount of data. It's about how to get it to use.
Exactly.
As you said, bringing the OT and the IT data together, making sure that these AI agents operate on top of this data.
Yeah.
So that's about it.
That's the story.
From us. Yeah, that's the story. Yeah. Thank you, Johan. It was a great discussion.
I enjoyed it.
Always pleasure talking to you about
I enjoyed it very much, Jagan. Thanks so
Thank you
much.
very much. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.